Hello and welcome everyone. Thank you very much for tuning in. This is a screencast-o-matic presentation for the part of the lesson on the oral traditions of Africa. Before we get started, please let me encourage you to open up to the correct part of today's lesson and to scroll down to the correct section on the Google Doc. Please get ready to answer any and all key concept questions that happen to appear, and please remember that you can replay any part of this presentation that you might need for detail and clarity later on. Before we get started, please let me preface the lesson this way. Africa has a unique history and culture, but did you know that most of Africa's native indigenous traditional culture was passed down orally? Think about how that might alter or defer the different types of ways and means upon which we perceive parts of the real story of Africa. This lesson will give us more insight into how African history and culture and traditions have been preserved through the oral traditions of Africa. Let's get started. What are the oral traditions? So oral traditions are messages that are transmitted orally from one generation to another. The messages may be passed down through speech or song and may take the form of folk tales and fables, epic histories and narrations, proverbs or sayings and songs, and oral traditions make it possible for society to pass knowledge across generations without writing. They help people make sense of the world and are used to teach children and adults about important aspects of their culture. The art of storytelling. There's a rich tradition throughout Africa of oral storytelling. Although written history existed for centuries in West Africa, most writing was in Arabic, and the majority of people did not read or write in Arabic. So the transmission of knowledge, history, and experience in West Africa was mainly through the oral tradition and performance rather than on written texts. Oral traditions guide social and human morals, giving people a sense of place and purpose. There's often a lesson or a value to instill, and the transmission of wisdom to children is a community responsibility. Parents, grandparents, and relatives take part in the process of passing down the knowledge of culture and history, and storytelling provides entertainment, develops imagination, and teaches important lessons about everyday life. A storyteller's tools are not just words, but gestures, singing, facial expressions, body movements, and acting to make stories memorable and interesting. Sometimes masks and costumes are used to enhance a performance. So a storyteller performs epics that can be hours or even days long that relate to history and genealogy, battles, and political uprisings of the community. They use riddles, proverbs, and myths to educate and entertain. Storytelling is an important shared event with people sitting together, listening and even participating in accounts of past deeds, beliefs, taboos, and myths, and gifted or well-known storytellers often repeat the story with the same words and same expressions in each performance as they travel. They also add new material to an old story to make it more interesting or meaningful to different audiences. So oral storytelling emphasizes repetition of the language and rhythm, which are two of the most important characteristics. Storytellers often repeat words, phrases, refrains, sounds, whole lines, and even stanzas. The use of repetition helps the audience remember the chorus and allows them to join in with the storyteller. A storyteller pays close attention to the beat and how the words sound. Using short phrases makes the stories easier to understand and recall from memory. When audiences who are familiar with the stories actively participate in their telling, they feel a sense of belonging to the community. The griot is a storyteller and oral historian in West African culture. He is social memory of the community and the holder of the word. The griot is the keeper of facts and important events of his time. It is his responsibility to pass this knowledge on to future generations, as well as that of the past times passed down to him by his ancestors. Originally, the griots were court musicians who sang at weddings, naming ceremonies, and religious celebrations, and they later evolved into advisors to nobility and messengers to the community. They sing songs of praise for their leaders and recount the great deeds of ancestors and the history of society. Griots are also advisors, ambassadors, negotiators, mediators, and advocates of the king to his allies and noble families. They are rewarded for their service to individuals and the community. Their fee varies and ranges from a few coins or a blanket to the more substantial payments, depending on the audience and the skill and popularity of the storyteller. In West Africa, griots have been practicing their craft for hundreds of years, and griots are described as the all-seeing, all-knowing eyes of society. There's spiritual and ethical dimension to their performances, and it's believed that special forces are released through the spoken or musical part of their performance. The griot is a female storyteller, and she traditionally sings at ceremonies, celebrations, and special occasions. When a woman is married, a griot will sing to her to prepare her for her new life. West African women sing about a woman's role in the society and their relationships with husbands and in-laws, and griots also use songs to express their independence and self-reliance or to give comfort, encouragement, and empowerment to other women. The Isabi is a long poetic narrative form sung by West African women to reveal the nature of relationships between men and women. Oral history is a form of West African oral tradition, and it is the recording, preservation, and interpretation of historical information based on a storyteller's personal experiences and opinions. It often takes the form of eyewitness account about past events, but can include folklore, myths, songs, and stories passed down over the years by word of mouth. West African fables and folk tales are full of wisdom and generally convey a moral to teach a lesson. Often these lessons are the ones of resourcefulness, independence, and illustrate the rewards of courage. There are different types of folk tales, with fables and talking beasts stories about the most common. African proverbs can convey wisdom, truth, a discovery of ideas, as well as life lessons as well. Epic narrations are the exploits of a hero who really existed or who played a major role in a people's history. Their adventures may have been exaggerated to have greater impact. Genealogies are the detailed histories of a dynasty of a people, and epic stories and genealogies are often sung by griots with a musical instrument. They can be very detailed and specific, providing historians with numbers, dates, and important names. Songs occupy an important place in African oral literature. Songs are present in all moments of life, especially on occasion of ritual ceremonies. Let's go ahead and move on to the next section here with some more insights about griots. Griots are historians, praise singers, and musical entertainers, and they are the guardians of knowledge of their people's ancestry and genealogy. But as history may have never been written down, the griot is crucial keeping records of the past. Griots are entrusted with the memorization, recitation, and passing on cultural traditions from one generation to the next. The griot is called upon at important events, during which he recounts a family's genealogy playing his kora or other musical instruments such as the balafon. During these ceremonies, the youngest griot acquires new knowledge. But griots also serve as teachers and advisors. In a time of Emperor Sundiata, griots tutored princes and gave counsel to kings, and they were educated and wise, and they used their detailed knowledge of history to shed light on present-day dilemmas. Long after the fall of the Malian Empire in 1468, a West African family of means would have their own griot to advise them and to help them negotiate matters with other families. Griots arranged the terms of marriages and mediated disputes, always relying on their understanding of each family's history. Griots as storytellers. After a good evening meal, with the moon shining down, the people of a village in ancient Africa might hear the sound of a drum, a rattle, and a voice that shouted, "Come here! Come here!" These were the sounds of the griot. When they heard the call, the children knew that they were going to hear a wonderful story, with music and dancing and song. Perhaps tonight the story would be about Anansi, the little spider. Everyone loved Anansi. Anansi could weave the most beautiful webs, and he was the one who taught the people of Ghana how to weave the beautiful mudcloth. Anansi had a good wife, strong sons, and many friends. He got into many a mess, and he used his wits and the power of humor to escape. There were other stories that people loved to hear over and over. Some stories were about the history of the tribe, and some were about great wars and battles. Some were about everyday life. There was usually only one storyteller per village, and if one village attempted to steal a storyteller from another village, it was cause for war. The griots were not only people who could tell a story. Anyone could shout, "Come here, come here." But the griots were the official storytellers. The village griot did not have to work in the fields. Their job was to tell stories well. 1,000 years later, new stories about new triumphs and new adventures are still being told by village griots, and they continue to play an important role in modern West African societies. But the griot's position in African society has changed. These performers are still in great demand to conduct ceremonies and parties, but today they are also popular singers who reinterpret traditional songs and perform on television and radio and record CDs. So griots are often the narrators in African film and explain or comment on the action or set of the stage for the tale being told. But despite the changes in their duties, they continue to be respected members of West African culture and provide a strong link to the past. They continue to be historians, genealogists, advisors to nobility, entertainers, messengers, praise singers in communities. Thank you very much for tuning in for this part of the reading. Please proceed to the next section here on African folktales.